This is the Danger Close podcast, Beyond the Books with me, Jack Carr. Welcome to the Danger Close podcast, an Ironclad original presented by Navy Federal Credit Union. Before we get started, In the Blood, the next novel in the James Reese series, is coming in hot on May 17th in hardcover, ebook, and audiobook, and is available for pre-order now. My guest today, Jason Kasper. What a fascinating guy. Enlists out of high school, becomes an Army Ranger, does 2 deployments as a Ranger, comes back, goes to West Point, gets his commission, goes to the 82nd Airborne, goes to Army Special Forces selection and training, and then deploys again as an Army Special Forces officer and gets out and has written 16 thrillers. He's also been very open and honest about his struggles with some post-traumatic stress issues, which we discuss on the podcast as well. Fascinating guy. And now, without further ado, Jason Kasper. Oh man, well, it's good to see you. I'm so glad we linked up. I've known about you for a while because every time I go on Amazon, your books are on the top of my screen. So whatever algorithm they're using to find out all that they know about me and what I'm going to like your books are at the top. You know, those at the algorithm based stuff that they want you to click on all the way across the top. And then Kyle Lamb, we have a mutual friend in Kyle Lamb, and he's like, "Oh man, you know this guy Jason?" I'm like, "Well, I know of him, but I don't know him," and that's how we got linked up.
Yeah, Kyle's a great guy.
Such a good dude. I mean, what a wealth of experience and so positive and just, what an amazing guy.
I just listened to your 3-hour episode with him yesterday. Oh, nice. Man, that was a marathon. What a great show.
Thank you. I'm so excited to talk to you. I mean, what an amazing run that you have had in the military, out of the military, and looking forward to getting to know you a bit.
Yeah, I think you've done okay for yourself too, Jack. You know, you've been doing all right.
It's been a sprint, that's for sure. I need to find some more balance, and I know I keep saying that, but I feel like we're still building that foundation.
Sure.
That maybe other people were building while we were in the military. That people were out there building businesses over that 20 years, and so I had to get out and kind of catch up. I still feel like I'm in that catch up phase as far as building the foundation. But background wise, did you always know you were going in the military growing up? I know your brother's still in, so you have some family, some DNA there in the family that leads you guys to service. But did you always know you were going in from when you were a little kid?
I think by the time I hit high school, I was really hardcore. Like I wanted to go either do special operations or be a fighter pilot. So
was that the influence of popular culture?
I got so wrapped up in high school, like reading every Vietnam War book I could get my hands on, like every Tom Clancy, and just kind of fell in love with all of it. So I was pretty dead set by the time I started high school. Okay. Spent a lot more time studying that than I did doing homework. So.
Same here. I was reading all those same books on the fiction side of the house with the Clancys and David Morrells and Nelson DeMilles and AJ Quinnell's, J.C. Pollocks, all that stuff, and then also the nonfiction stuff that was coming out, whether it was a magazine article or a newspaper article or a book, autobiography, whatever it was. I just was reading all that stuff. So it sounds very similar. And then, did you graduate and go right in?
Yeah, I graduated in 2001. So I was in towards the end infantry training during 9/11, and then it's off from there.
Geez. So what was your basic? How does that work for the Army? And you went in really quick. So did you have to get parental permission while you were in high school? So you knew right afterward you're going in? Did you have to?
Yeah, I signed right after my 17th birthday. I did the delayed entry program. And I also applied to West Point. I was bottom 50% of my high school class. So they gave me the hard pass. And I enlisted. And then, I had a Ranger contract. You do basic training, infantry training is kind of rolled up at the end of it at Fort Benning, and then airborne school, and then straight to RIP, which is the regiment selection process at the time.
Yeah, I remember guys going through that when we went after Buzz. They sent us to Benning, so I still did that. And it was cool to look up at all those the swing landing trainer and all that stuff. That looked like the black and white videos that you saw of World War II in Korea of guys doing the same things.
Not much has changed.
No, but I went through when did I go there? 1997, fall of '97, I think. And man. Yeah. It probably looks exactly the same today for static line.
Yep.
2 days of training crammed into 3 weeks, I think is how it was described.
Yeah. And it's pretty accurate.
Where was your basic though? What was you? Are you in with everybody, and then you kind of like, but you already have your Ranger contract, so kind of like we had the dive fair program, which gave us in Navy boot camp just the opportunity to try out. But you already know you're going, and so where's your basic? Is it like Fort Polk or something?
No, it's all at Fort Benning. Now they call it Fort Benning School for Boys. Yeah, all the infantry guys go to the same. It's called one station unit training. So it's basic roll straight into your infantry job training in one big like 14-week block or something like that.
Oh, got it. So you're in, and is there time off between like your boot camp and going to jump school? No, you're just going.
Yeah, straight through.
Nice. And then what was the Ranger indoctrination program? That's just like a pre-phase before Ranger school, or is that how that works?
That's the gateway into Ranger Regiment if you're enlisted, and it's a 3-week basically smoke fest for privates. Like they do the land nav, all the physical assessments, swim test, everything else. But for the most part, they just at the time just crushed souls and got everybody who would quit to quit. And by the end, anybody left standing pretty much went to you have your graduation, they pin your scroll and are like, it's harder to keep than it was to earn. Like, good luck. And then they send you off. And I went to a Ranger company that had just gotten back from Afghanistan in October 2001.
So they were
so they had jumped into Afghanistan. They all came back with a combat jump and their, combat infantry badge. And then I'm the new guy in the company, like late 2001. So the crop that I reported the 3rd Battalion with got pretty demolished. I think they lost like a lot of guys, like just quit regiment or got fired pretty quickly after that. So it's a steep learning curve.
Wow. But were you still in your boot camp when 9/11 happened then? Or were you out?
Yeah, it was kind of the very end of infantry training. We were doing we were on a field exercise, and then, it was like one morning we're all camping in the woods and the instructors had their cadre shack, and we just everybody was up like ready to go, and like the instructors just never came out. And then drill sergeant popped out and was like, who's from New York City? Like, who's got family in the World Trade Center? Like, pulled that one kid. And then they told us tower got hit, and then second tower, Pentagon, like, we're under attack. And we had some time just to talk to our friends, and I got together with all the guys in the Ranger contract, my buddies, and I was like, dude, we have to quit, like, drop our Ranger contracts, forget airborne school, like, get to a unit before this ends. Because I had the frame of reference, like, Grenada, Panama, Gulf War, exactly. Battle of Mogadishu, everything's
you're gonna miss it.
Very short. You're going to miss it. And we had a UVA grad with me who'd actually like spent a lot of time in college, like written papers on Afghanistan. He was the first one. He was like, this is coming from, everybody's thinking China the whole time we were in basic. That's a big war. And he was like, it's going to be like Afghanistan or terrorists out of Afghanistan. And we're like, oh, it's like, what are you talking about, man? And he said it again that morning, and turned out to be right. And he was also the one talking to me. I was like, listen, countries don't go into Afghanistan and get out quickly. Like, you're not missing anything. Like, told what we got. And I ended up being very right.
Interesting. Oh man, as a student of warfare, I thought I was going to miss it too, because once again, my frame of reference was the same as yours. And we were on deployment when it happened, so we thought we were going to go right in. We're like, wow, okay, awesome. But everybody back home thought they were going to miss it. And then we ended up just doing shipboarding operations for Team 3, who then went into Afghanistan. So we thought after that happened, we're like, oh man, we missed it. Because now we got to get back in this rotation. It's for sure going to be over. And then 20 years later, of course, we saw how that everything being turned out. There was no threat of actually missing it.
No danger of missing it. You could have waited 10 years to join and still gone to the show. My team leader in Ranger Regiment, actually, he passed Special Forces assessment and selection as a corporal, as an E4. Which is a pretty big deal because they didn't take many of them. Mm-hmm. And we were in Afghanistan 2002, and he was like, yeah, I'm going to skip the qualification course. Like, I'm not going to like take those orders and go Special Forces because I don't want to miss the upcoming 1-year war with Iraq. Wow. And at the time we were all like, dude, that's a really smart call. Like, you don't want to, you don't want to be stuck in training.
Right. You don't want to be in school. Oh man, so wild. So you get to Ranger Bat and you go through Ranger school at this point. So you go through Ranger school.
You usually do. a year or two in Ranger Battalion, and then you go to Ranger School, and that's kind of when you come back from Ranger School and you become a team leader. Now, I didn't do that. I didn't go to Ranger School with Ranger Regiment. I deployed twice, then did Afghanistan 02, invasion of Iraq in 03, and then I got accepted to the West Point Prep School. So like right after the invasion, I shipped out to the prep school. Terrible decision, but yeah. And then I was prep school for a year, West Point for 4 years. Like, wow, the war's still going on. This is crazy. And then, came back out of that, went airborne infantry, was with 82nd for platoon leader time, did another like 12-month Afghanistan with them, and then went to special forces after that.
How are those first 2 deployments? So you're deploying as a Ranger with guys who already had a deployment under their belts, or some guys anyway had a deployment or 2 under their belt, probably with a task force or something like that. And then you guys go in. What was that like? Brand new guy, first deployment, Afghanistan, still fairly early on.
Yeah, it was awesome. I mean, it's definitely like winning the Super Bowl. And we're all me and all the new guys, like very grateful to be there. And even our company, they did that first jump in October 01. Took an airfield, and they were kind of in and out back to Pakistan. Did some support stuff for other guys, and then it was very awesome to be there. But it was also like the country was pretty quiet in 02. I mean, the Taliban had learned like, okay, we can't be marching around in battalion-sized formations to get bombed. So a lot of them had flushed across the border or were keeping their heads down. And we'd get shot at. Like there was combat, but nothing like my last trip there in 2015, which is just gangbusters. Not a good indication of how national strategy was going, but
right.
Yeah, it was Afghanistan was my quietest deployment was 02.
That first one.
Yep.
No kidding. Because we're still figuring it out. The bad guys have already adapted. Yep. We're trying to figure out these intel cycles and how to run the human over there and not end up settling somebody's centuries old feud. Because they can drop some intel that we're eager to go after. So I guess that's the time where we're figuring that stuff out, I guess. Huh?
Sure. Yeah. And the bad guys are figuring like, okay, they've got night vision, they've got infrared lasers, they've got air support. And they were very cautious. And then Iraq was,
you came back. Total. So you did, was it a 3-monther at that time over there? Or did you
did, I think it was 3 or 4 months to Afghanistan that first trip. And then then we kicked out to Iraq for the invasion in March.
Did you go right from one to like another? Were you at the end of 2002 or did you go home first?
We went home first.
Do another workup type of
thing. Yeah. And then they were handing out all the Iraq intel. And they were like, we're redeploying to Afghanistan. You weren't supposed to tell your families or anything, but it's all over the news. When I was there in summer, fall 02, we checked the news, see if it goes that mission we did on the news. And it was just like road to Iraq. We're invading in the spring. It was a real quick turnaround, train up for Iraq, mostly practicing airfield seizure stuff. And then my company jumped in. And I was like the cherry because I only had 1 combat jump and they all had 2. It was the invasion was just awesome. I mean, like flying in, nap of the earth, like full on anti-aircraft fire, like lighting up the windows. And then we took jumped into secure desert landing strip, and they landed in the C-17s. Night Stalkers offload all the rotary wing, start running ops, and then DevGru was running missions out. And we held the airfield for about a week, just every night watching the fireworks over Baghdad, hearing like the B-1s, B-2s rolling in and out overhead. And then they were like, they were probing us at the airfield. Interestingly, like I'd see them, and I'd be pulling guards, this pool table flat by Al-Qaim, Iraq, for them to select it for a landing area. So you'd see like their observers, you just see like a little glint of a windshield like roll up over the horizon, and then it would roll back out of sight. A minute later, they probed us all week. We didn't get hit. And then we were breaking down the airfield because Alpha Company did another combat jump and took H1. So we were breaking down, flying by C-130, shuttling over there, collapsing the perimeter with each load of C-130 troops. And my platoon was the last platoon on the ground at the airfield. We've been living out of a hole in the ground for a week, just getting rained down, like torrential rain, like mud and baking hot, and the nights were freezing, Iraq. So we'd collapse the perimeter down, and I just happened to be looking like the bird landed, slowed down, braked, did its turnaround where it had done a turnaround. for the previous platoon shocks. And then just mortar rounds started coming in. I mean, the first one missed the bird by maybe 100 meters. Like they were pretty dialed in. And then it was just, get out of the fucking birds. And those pilots, like balls of steel, like they held their ground until it was just racing through, the prop blasts. You're running through total brownout. You can't see anything. And everybody literally piles into the back of an aircraft. And then like the combat controllers like racing in with their ATVs and everybody just like diving out of the way. And then they started like as soon as the first sergeant said last man, like just max throttle takeoff and, flew us over to H1. And that was like the start of the deployment. So very different from Afghanistan 02 and a lot of fun.
Wow. Welcome to Iraq.
Oh, yeah, man. Right.
Interesting. So like even in 2009, I remember they were switching us all around. You're going to Afghanistan. No, you're going to Iraq. No, you're going to the Philippines. No, you're going. It was like just this circle. No one knew where we were going. And but I remember they were being very secretive. Like, don't tell anybody that you're going to Afghanistan. And it's like, have you not watched the news for the last 9 years?
I think the word's out.
But it was like the senior level guys that hadn't done any actual combat. It was like their first time, and they were not going to be in a talk. Of course, they're going to be allocating assets and leading from the talk. As O5s and Master Chiefs and that sort of thing. But so they were all secret squirrel about these sorts of things, and everybody else is kind of like, we've already been there. Well, we've been there for 9 years, but all of us have been in and out of there for the most part. But that was crazy. But welcome to Iraq, and it was interesting. So I was just behind you in all these places. But I was in Afghanistan when everybody picked up, when task force picked up. I was augmenting, just helping, help. It was a great experience for me. But the whole task force like picked up and went to Iraq. Like this huge, I mean, what a task force looks like, and that intel package and the legit, like all of that picked up from Bagram and went to Iraq and left like me and one other. I'm a brand new officer. I was enlisted like you first, and but now I'm an ensign, whatever. But I'm not wearing any rank because when dealing with big army from the Navy, they assumed I was a major because I was a little bit older, because I had that enlisted experience or whatever.
Yeah, I'd ride that out.
And had been on a few, whatever, had a little experience under my belt at that point. But everything lifted off and moved, and it was very telling about how we were shifting our resources to a new theater. But I got a ton of experience because all that huge package, as you know, what a task force looks like. Now it's like me and one other guy supporting the outstations and getting these mission approval processes through big army and allocating these, figuring out the was it the blue, right? The resupply birds, all the different outstations and all that stuff. And so it was interesting. I learned a ton when all that support left, but I had about a month with them there, maybe 2 months. And then they picked up and left and then did the rest of it. But so I was just behind you, I think, in Afghanistan, and then got to Iraq in 2004. So I was just behind you there as well. And was your brother up in Mosul? Is that what I heard at some point? Was he Stryker?
Yeah, he was Stryker at the time. So he was there. He was, he went post-invasion. So yeah, he was there a bit after I was.
So maybe I was up there with the Stryker Brigade in 2004 in Mosul. So maybe he was there at the same time. I don't know.
Yeah, that would have been around the time frame.
Okay. Yeah, it was interesting. And I passed back through in 2005 because we did a bunch in a row at the time. What a crazy experience. So you saw that too. You saw the whole the task force infrastructure. You saw everything shift to Iraq on your first deployment to Iraq.
Yeah.
Previously having been in Afghanistan, did that register with you, or are you just like, hey, I'm Ranger. I'm here on the ground. I'm going to get we're going to start crushing souls.
Dude, at the time, I was thrilled. Looking back now, like you don't need to be a history major to understand. Like, hey, this might not be a great idea. Like you bite off on one endless counterinsurgency, and hey, kick off a second with no evac plan from either place, and leave the first country resource starved during your golden hour. You have to build everything. I wish I could say I thought that at the time, but no, I was thrilled. You're like 2 wars, like back to back. Like this could be incredible. But yeah, Ranger Regiment actually deployed all 3 battalions to Iraq simultaneously for the invasion. I have 1 company in Afghanistan. And I have a buddy who was one of those guys. He was like the only company in Ranger Regiment to miss the invasion. And yeah, looking back, I'm like, man, that was really, really a bad idea, Like,
yeah.
6 months in the graveyard of empires, just drop the mic, walk away. Like, we paid the price for the next 20 years, and Afghans are still paying the price now. I still got a Terp over there and a couple families we got across the border to Pakistan that we're trying to figure out
Oh, wow.
running humanitarian parole and special immigrant visa applications. And it's just a nightmare.
Oh, wow. God, yeah. Crazy. What a crazy 2 decades. And did you know already that you were eventually going to put in a packet to go to either OCS or to West Point when you came in enlisted?
Yeah. So I had, I applied out of high school and I sold my parents on like the contracts, a backup. But I was at that point, I can't say like, oh, I would have turned down West Point, but I might have because I like read Black Hawk Down and I was like, holy cow, like 19-year-olds in combat, like that's like what I like. Why would you go straight to school? And at the time I thought, the Rangers were out hitting terrorist camps and low vis stuff. I didn't realize it went from like Mogadishu to 01.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, I'd sold them on that. West Point didn't take me. I reapplied from Ranger Regiment, and I just wanted to go to West Point because I'm an idiot. And all the officers, West Point grads included, in my Ranger company, like pulled me aside and were like, "Listen, like Jason, you want to go be a, you want to be an officer? That's cool. Do green to gold, do ROTC, like wait a while and do."
Oh, they were like, "Don't do it.
You do not want to go to West Point. Like it's awful." And I'm just stubborn. I was like, no, that's the toughest. I want to go to West Point.
Had you visited like in high school? Had you been there to just?
I had. My brother went there, so I had visited. Okay. And I was like, yeah, this place is awesome. And looking back now, I was like, I really should have listened to them.
Really?
But yeah. And I look back now, I'm like, why did you go? And the only good reason I can think of is they said I couldn't. So I think it was one of those things.
Interesting. I get it.
Told me no. I'm like, I'm going to show you. And then I got there, and I was like, wow, I should have taken that hint from the universe and not ever gone here. So.
Wow. What was it like to have combat under your belt and now be in school with a lot of people, most of them coming from high school that hadn't seen combat yet? Was that strange? And you went to prep school first. So they have a prep school. I know the Navy has one too. I think the Navy's one is in maybe Rhode Island, and then you go to Annapolis. Or is prep school for West Point co-located, or where is that?
It was in Jersey at the time I went. It's now co-located on the West Point campus.
Okay, and it is a beautiful campus. Like if you're not going there, that architecture is. I went up there in January of 2005, maybe, and I think that was it. But I went up there because I had been involved in the Battle for Najaf, working with mostly conventional Army units out there. I had my SEAL sniper team and a bunch of other things. And so I came there to talk about, went to Eisenhower Hall and up on stage there. It was crazy. I spent the whole day, and they showed me how they did the feed everybody, and I got to see all that, and they gave me the tour and everything. But I was talking about special operations support for conventional forces and how the paradigm had kind of shifted from a training mentality of, oh, everyone's going to support us in our little bubble in special operations, and they're here for us to wait a second, got the ground in a job. And I'm like, no one's supporting us. I'm here to support 27 Cav at the time, and everybody that was attached to retake the city of Najaf, and how that worked out, my relationship with the battalion commander and all that stuff. And so it was a really cool experience to be on that stage and get that tour and see all that. But the architecture stands out to me to this day, and the museum that I think was just outside the gate when I was there, and now might be inside the gate. They might have pushed it, I think, for security or something. Anyway, can't remember. It's been a while, but that's a beautiful place if you're not one of the students, I think.
I realized that, I went back for my 10-year reunion, and I was like, wow, it's gorgeous here. Like, it's a great place to bring your family. Not so much if you're a cadet there, but take what you can get.
Yeah, no, that's wild. So what was it like to be in school when you know that some of the guys that you had just deployed to Afghanistan and Iraq with are doing more pumps down range? Did you think about that? Or were you just like, roger that, going through school now, and then I'll shift back to, for you, I think it was 82nd after you got out. But what was that like to spend 4 years? And was it 5 with prep, or how does that work?
Yeah, it's 5 with prep.
Okay.
So it's pretty much an ideal recipe for a lot of guilt and shame issues. And at the time when I left, I had a couple considered. One, hey, this is all going to be over in a year. Like, be grateful you got your time in, because this is going to end. It's lasting even longer than 2 weeks in Panama in 89. Great. So I was, I used to I was checking the news every day looking for KIA, and Tillman got killed right after, and I didn't know him or anything. I wasn't in the same battalion, but so I was constantly checking reports. And I also, at the time, I had a fiance, and at the time I was not aware she was sleeping with, my best friend from high school. So, overall, not a lot of great decision making on my part. But I watched the news for that entire 5-year stretch. And he's like, wow, this isn't ending and we'll get a chance to go back. We're lucky we'll catch the end because they're doing the surge in Afghanistan. Right. It's all about to shut down. So yeah, I kind of bought into the party line, like totally. And I was like, this is like, I'll be lucky to get back out there as an officer. So anyway, I bring up the point about my fiance at the time because there's an age limit at West Point. It's a very young, like age cap where, you know, if you're not under 21 or 22 at the time, it was something really, really young. You know, when I turned 19, I think, in Ranger Battalion. So yeah, I wanted to get in and out, get on with my life and everything else. And obviously it didn't work out great from that perspective. My logic was a little flawed, but you know, I was a kid, so yeah, I'm not a rocket surgeon right now, but as a 18-year-old, 19-year-old, Kasper was actually way worse.
Oh man. But during that time you got to do like, I guess in the Naval Academy, I think guys go and they spend a summer somewhere, they go like on a ship and see how that works or whatever. And you got to go do something like that at some point and actually go and be part of a staff almost for task force or something along those lines. How did that work?
Yeah. I got really lucky. My brother at the time was, he was working, he crossed over from infantry to military intelligence, and he was working at 2nd Battalion and 160th, which is a cool battalion. And he worked this drug deal for me to get my top secret clearance and, you know, get an assignment there. So I spent, like 4 weeks, like working with them and getting to see the initial mission qualification process, the full mission qualification process for their pilots. Like even the guys, when they're there for a certain amount of time, they have to do this whole like run on these really advanced like, mission plan where they're, you know, they spend days and days planning this mission and get to the point where when they say like plus or minus 30 seconds anywhere in the world, like I was watching a full mission qualification that was like, you know, we went out of state to an offsite training area, and they did a pretty complex setup procedure. And it was they were running little birds, and they did the startup process, and like the engine flamed out on the first startup. And one of the pilots, like an observer, he was next to me, and he was like, if they flame out again, he's going to miss this hard time. And then the guy in charge of this is going to either disqualify, shut it down, and send everybody back 3 states over to go home, or let him run the mission just for the training, knowing that he's failed. And I was like, man, this is like their margin for error is nothing. Yeah. And I got to do the orientation, right? Like literally riding in adapts, like
nice
in a jump seat between the ammo cans and
defensive
when they're doing
platform.
Yeah, it was wild. But I came away from that and I got to do the little bird rides,
nice.
They took me and my brother up at the same time, do like an orientation ride on their like, where they land on like a little shipping container and put the skids down and everything. And like I walked up, met the pilot, I was like, hey, my brother says, you'll never make us puke. Like, he said you don't have any balls. My brother's like, Jay, like, stop, like, shut up. And those pilots, man, they can turn and burn like nothing I've ever seen. And I know Kyle was just harping on the 160th with his episode, but man, I came away from that and I was like, these aviators are like every bit the special operations warriors, anybody on the ground, period. And then also at West Point, I was on the skydiving team there. They were flying Hueys at the time. And we had this new pilot come in. He looked like really old. But I was like looking at his rank and it was like, it was so worn. I was like, is that a first lieutenant bar? Like how is this guy like a 50-year-old?
Like I'm a warrant officer.
Well, I met him. Yeah, he was a CW5, and it was Dan Gelada, who was Battle of Mogadishu, and then he went and did some other stuff. He was the guy like flying over the city with the bullhorn saying like, Michael Durant, we will not leave you. And got to like have beers and everything with him and get like his life wisdom. And I was like fully impressed. This guy's a special operations legend. And then one time I saw him instead of a flight suit in like his regular ACU uniform, like special forces tab, dive bubble, like everything. And I was like, you used to be SF. He's like, yeah, I did this for a while when I was SF. And I was like, man, this is like crazy. Like you couldn't be any more impressed with this human being as an individual, both for, his obviously flying abilities, but also like his willingness to like mentor the next generation of people that are going to be going into the fight. Legend of a human being. And then the night before I went to Special Forces selection, got a phone call from Dan Gelada. He was like, hey man, like keep your head up. Like get through it.
Awesome.
Give them everything you got. Like, best of luck. I know you'll kill it. And I'm like, man, like this is years after I, had last seen him. So
That is
just
wild.
Stellar people you meet in the community.
Yeah. Did you know while you were at West Point that SF was where you wanted to go, or did you know that when you were in high school and then when you were a ranger?
I knew that in high school.
So that was your path.
I had that's one of the reasons I wanted to become an officer. I really wanted to be like a Green Beret team leader. I just thought that was the coolest thing. I remember being like 16 years old, having dreams that literally like at night, having dreams about being like a Green Beret team leader. And I saw that as like that was the job I really wanted. So I did, everything I could to get there. And then once I did it, I had like the pinnacle experience, like the ultimate, the best team I could have possibly had, the best deployments I could have possibly had. Like everything worked out perfect. And interestingly enough, when I was in Afghanistan in 2002, we replaced 1st Ranger Battalion. And there was a story circulating on Bagram about, let's call it a particularly grisly and close quarters kill of an enemy combatant. So this story was floating around. We're like, my God, like that was our first back out. This is crazy. And then fast forward to, 2014 or whenever, like me and my team sergeant were hanging out, drinking and just swapping war stories and everything. And he was like, describe this grisly close quarters kill of an enemy combatant. And I like in 2002, and I like looked at him, like, that was you? Like, that's we wild. Heard about your whole deployment. And yeah, he had enlisted, went into 2nd Ranger Battalion out of Seattle, re-enlisted for 1st Ranger Battalion to be closer to home in Georgia. And so as a result, this guy he was like Operation Anaconda, Roberts Ridge, Jessica Lynch Rescue, did platoon sergeant time, conventional infantry, like an 18-month deployment with like gunfights every day, went special forces. And this guy had like, by the time I started, we were like, it was his 15th, 16th deployments. And he had done stuff with task force in between. So he just crazy team sergeant, the kind of guy who's like, this guy was like bred for warfare. And then we had really experienced non-commissioned officers together with like younger non-commissioned officers who did the 18 X-ray program to go straight into the Q course that were just absolute rock stars. So we had the full gamut, and degrees of experience. And it was kind of just the perfect storm of people at the right place and the right time, where by the time I came out, by the time I was done with my team time, I was like, I will never do anything. I could stay in another 10, 15 years and never like relive anything like this.
Jeez. You had to go. So for SF selection, do you have to be is it a captain or a first lieutenant or hat captain? So you got to
be a captain. You have like a 1-year window to pass selection.
Okay.
So I got my selection date and immediately the email came in and I wrote the guy right back. I was like, hey, can I front load blah, blah, blah for this year group? Because, my thing is you get injured or whatever, you might get one more shot within that year if you're on the front end. Otherwise you're done. Like their officer timelines are so tight then. So they front loaded me like the 2nd class for my year group.
And you had to go to 82nd. Did you deploy with 82nd first?
Yeah. So I came in as airborne infantry platoon leader, which I'll say like that is the 2nd best job I've ever had in the Army. Wow. Like everybody talks about like special forces team leader, special mission unit, like troop commanders. I think being an infantry platoon leader in combat was close 2nd.
Where'd you guys go?
We were in Afghanistan. So yeah, I did a 12-month trip with them.
12 months. That is no joke right there. What year's that?
Yeah, that was 2009 to 2010.
Oh, dang. Wow. That's
wild.
Yeah.
So great experience with those guys. And, I said the same thing to Kyle, like everybody talks about like, special operations, but the conventional infantry guys are so like undersupplied and under-equipped relative to, when we go out, you have every CAS medevac platform, like they would send these guys and be like, hey, we're dropping into this district, link up with the ANA, ANP, like the military, the police, and figure it out, set up a base in the middle of town and start running ops. And the sheer like grit with those guys. And then also we were detached, we were kind of out on our own. It was similar to an SF mission. It's partner force operations. We were out in the middle of nowhere. The battalion couldn't resupply or support us that much. And it was there. I was already dead set on special forces, but that's where I really gained an appreciation for like that ODA, like the special forces team structure with like weapon specialist, engineer specialist, your medics, your commo guy. I was like, this all made sense because the radio operators, the guys who'd been to like the radio operations courses and stuff, their time was at a premium to set up and maintain communications long range. Anybody with any like building, construction, electrical wiring experience, those guys were working around the clock. Our platoon medic was constantly seeing like, not just tending to our guys' issues, but running every day, like running the Afghan military or Afghan police, doing like med calls for them, doing it for local civilians. So I came out of that and I was like, this SF makes complete sense to me. And then when I got there, I was like, yeah, it still makes sense to me. Like I think that organization, I've got the highest amount of respect for them. It's just incredible what they can do with minimal manpower and no support, and they just figure it out.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, like you talked about special operations getting, the limelight and all that stuff, but nothing but the utmost respect for those guys going in, like 82nd Airborne, dropped off in some place where they don't speak the language, told to figure it out. There's, no AC-130s coming every night to make sure you're okay, or there's no Predator or Reapers up above, and there's no stacked air for you constantly throughout the entirety of your mission that you're choosing the time and place of the engagement. Not all the time for the most part. Man, nothing but respect for those guys. I mean, every time I run across somebody like that, and have a conversation with one of these guys out there and they feel like you're doing what? No way you're out here by yourselves. Like it was incredible. And nothing but respect. Same thing. People that are out there like that Marine E1, E2, E3 standing the gate guard duty, at these things like front line, like as a car's coming up, filled with a family maybe, or maybe something else, sagging on suspension over there. Like, what? Yeah. Like who knows? Nothing but the utmost respect for those guys. Oh my gosh, just incredible. So you do that. So you have a year on the ground in Afghanistan, getting after it, and then you come home. And how long is the break between that and going to SF selection?
I went pretty quick. I went the same year I got back, so I had maybe 6-7 months to train up. But you don't start the qualification course immediately. So I pretty much came back. I became an executive officer, rifle company executive officer. So you're second in command behind the captain, and you're pretty much managing all the logistics, like all the property book accountability and everything, setting up all the training ranges, like all the administrative stuff, which is, I went for months, just didn't see my house during the day, period. Wow. Because you're, working such long hours. The guy they pulled me in to replace was like drowning apparently for a year. So I came in like, here's 32 field loss, like flipples, like when you lose equipment or get blown up, or in this company's case, they had a whole base leveled by a massive like VBID. And miraculously, nobody was killed. But the lost equipment, so he had like a year to do this and apparently didn't do any of it right. So I fell in on like, we were in garrison, so I wasn't like missing out on combat, but it was just crazy amounts of administrative logistic stuff. And I did that for a year, went to selection about 6 months into it. And then at the end of that year, went to the military captain's career course, which qualifies you to be a company commander equivalent. Okay. And then straight into like the special forces qualification course at Bragg, which is like another, year and a half.
Okay. And how's that? Like, how's Robin Sage? And, you hear about it. I've been reading about that since I was a little kid, of course. And how was that experience?
Man, I had the best experience. The instructors there are incredible. You did like 6 months of language school up front at the time, which is a bad way to do it because anybody who quits during the course has just had 6 months of classroom time. But I spent 6 months doing Arabic, and then they send you into small unit tactics, which is basically ranger school. Okay. It's also 8 weeks long. It's also ambush, patrolling, reconnaissance focused. But the special forces like SUT course, in my opinion, was like far, far superior. And I remember like we had some of the 18X rated kids I was going through with were like, man, this must be so boring for you because you're doing all the same ambushes and stuff as ranger school. I was like, you know what? It's not boring. I'm actually learning a lot because I don't remember ranger school. Like they took sleep deprivation to such an extreme that like, I don't remember any of it.
And they're starving you, right? They're giving you 1 MRE a day or something like that.
Yeah. Jeez. So, you want a snapshot of ranger school. Here it is. Okay. Like close your eyes. Now open them. You're looking through night vision. There's like a fallen tree that you just walked into at like waist level. There's nobody in front of you in the middle of the woods. You turn around and there's like 30 guys in a row behind you that have followed you up this hill when you like fell asleep while moving.
Oh my god!
And then you see like an instructor like down the hill, like turning on a white, like everybody stop, and like racing up to recover you before students just disappear into the woods. I think John, like guy in front of me in patrol, like turn around on a night patrol, and it's John Wayne, like chin strap unbuckled, like I'll show you the way, and just wanders off. And I would follow him, and somebody would like grab me, and it's that
fantastic.
Students checking each other the whole time. Now, what they did in small unit tactics with special forces training, it's all the same instruction, all the same doctrinal ambushes. You have to learn, by the books, because you're going to be training other forces to do it. But we would, be out in the freezing rain for 4 hours in the ambush line. Your structural, you do the ambush, you act on the objective, whatever the mission is. You do your SSE, your site exploitation, get the intel or whatever, and then you move out on your plan, like your next patrol base or whatever. And they would let you move about 500 meters, and they would say, stop, set up like quick patrol base, get a perimeter, and like go to sleep. And they would make you sleep 4 hours a night. I remember everything from that.
Oh, wow.
I remember everything we learned. I had a Navy support guy that's assigned to my team later. We were actually under a SEAL command in Africa. And we were like on a Humvee ride. Like we were out, between the villages and stuff. And he's like, oh, so what's Ranger School like? Like, I really want to go. And I was telling him, and I gave him like a really great class, like just over vehicle comms on like how to set up an ambush. And it was all from SUT.
Nice.
So I think some of the sleep deprivation stuff gets overrated to a point.
Yeah.
But yeah, 8 weeks in that, then SEER school. So the survival, evasion, resistance, escape, which is also a great time, phenomenal course. I know you guys, everybody goes to, their service branch's version of SEER school. But and then after that, they break you up into your job specialty. So all the 18 alphas, the officers, all go to like 3-4 months of just captain training. The 18
specific to SF.
Yep.
Okay. Cool.
The 18 echoes, like the communications guys go off to theirs. The medics vanish for a year. Like they are on a separate cycle because the special operations combat medicine is insane.
Yeah.
Everybody splits up to their job training. And then the second best training I've ever got after Robin Sage was like the 18 Alpha course, the Special Forces, team commander course. They did such crazy scenarios without, betraying any future attendees who are listening. They put you in really crazy low-vis. You're out, civilian clothing, civilian services, meeting sources, running stuff. Guys getting rolled up, like cop car rolls up, and dude jumps out, and it's one of the cadre in a police uniform supported by local law enforcement, like throws dudes in the back. Like it's like you're behind enemy lines, running low visibility stuff. Full like all the mission planning stuff was incredible. And that's one of the things that also sold me on the officer piece, because I know our first mission planning process, like, okay, we're not going to run this section. This is the first thing we did in the course. So like do a con op, like an operations plan for a special reconnaissance mission. This location, here's your maps, here's your everything, and put together like the initial mission brief, right? And we put this together. We spent 6-7 hours doing it, and we did a 1 hour brief for the instructor. He stopped us, and we spent every minute of 3 hours with him picking apart everything about this presentation. Yeah. And at the time, I was kind of like jaded. I was like, man, and I actually asked him, I was like, sure, like, why does it matter? Like the fonts in the headings, in these little granular things about PowerPoint, right? Like, why does that matter? And he was like, okay, when you go to U.S. Special Operations Command headquarters, they've got a giant map of the world. And there's a little like light or whatever, a little pin on like every spot where there's a U.S. Special Operations team, SEAL platoon, Green Beret team, Ranger platoon, whatever. And they've got, it says like the designator, the numerical designator for that team, and the last name of the commander. So he's like, when you send this product up, it doesn't matter if you've got the most pipe-hitting group of guys in the universe. If your products that you're sending to get the mission approval to get out the gate are sloppy, and they're going to a talk full of, like you said, people sitting in these air-conditioned headquarters and stuff that are giving you the A or nay. He's like, if you're not representing the best efforts of your guys, like they don't get out. Like that's what you exist to do, is to be the portal between your guys getting out and this, keeping them shielded from this massive bureaucracy that approves this stuff at the political level. And I was like, got it. And after that, I was wired in. I drank the Kool-Aid. And I did everything they said. But incredible training course. But at the end of that, though, all the students come together and they put you together in student teams. So if you're, I was trained as a captain, like, cool, you're the team leader, and here's these guys coming back from the communications courses, the engineering courses with the demolitions and everything. And then you get basically medics that started the course, a year before you or whatever.
Right.
But they put you in student detachments and you go out to Robin Sage. And there was like a 2-week train up where they put you in, again, crazy situations, but you might do 5 or 6 a day.
Yeah.
Like, you go to a mock village and it's actual like Montagnards who came over from Vietnam that the special forces brought back after the Vietnam War. Huge Montagnard community in Fort Bragg, or outside Fort Bragg and Camp McCall. And so it's straight up civilians, and you walk in and it's, hey, you're in charge for this round, go. And here's a scenario, like you're behind enemy lines, you're doing a black market arms buy, like walk into this bar, and just crazy, crazy stuff.
Yeah.
And then they've got all the weapons and everything, and
that's awesome.
Need to figure out, like, okay, that's an anti-aircraft piece in the corner. Like, that's a shoulder fired anti-aircraft piece. And like the lessons from it are like, you buy that to get it off the market because it's going to hit your supply birds, when you're getting your resupply. So crazy situations are then, the villagers are about to, like, they're mobbing a dude who, they claim, like, raped a girl in the village or whatever. And the lesson is, like, you let them do it. And you report it at your convenience, but you do not interfere. Like, you don't, like, they will kill you. Like, they'll turn on your team type, really, really cool stuff. Working with partner forces and teaching these lessons that really get you thinking outside the box. And after 2 weeks of that, doing the scenarios and also the mission planning for your Robin Sage infiltration, it's a huge planning process. They treat it all unconventional warfare focused, which is, for anybody who's not familiar, you're going in to help the resistance overthrow a government. So it's Afghanistan 01, like dudes on horseback, like that's UW. It's the SF core mission. And it's not that often utilized real world, but they've placed so much emphasis on it because if you can do that, you can do anything on that complex political spectrum where you're doing foreign internal defense or security force assistance and dealing with insurgencies and, military coups overthrowing the government. Like, if you can, even in training, execute unconventional warfare, you're so well equipped to operate in these really ambiguous circumstances. Huge planning process, massive back brief where they bring in like SF group commanders and battalion commanders to like receive your back brief. And then you do the infiltration, and they've got a bunch of different lanes for Robin Sage that run all over the state. They've got hundreds and hundreds of civilian role players. And you do your infiltration, and without giving it away, like every lane is different. So every team, some guys jumping, some guys are riding mules, or they're doing civilian vehicles. It's just a full gamut of this huge multi-phase infiltration to link up with a guerrilla unit, role players and everything. And they have people who speak your language, and you have to speak to them in Arabic to negotiate your team's passage. And then, you're basically in the box for 2 weeks straight, running out of a G camp, like a guerrilla camp, training and taking these people. And it's a pretty compressed UW. So you look at like the phases of unconventional warfare. It's really compressed, where you do a certain train up period, then you start taking them to execute confidence targets, small checkpoints and stuff, teaching them and doing it real world, for them within the training scenario where they're doing battlefield resupply and learning how to check intelligence, and then setting up all your caches when you get blown out of the guerrilla base, when the government finds it. And then at a certain point, you cross what's called the threshold of violence, where like you don't want to escalate until everybody's trained, equipped, you've got established guerrilla bases, you've linked in with the area command, the other special forces teams, and the other guerrilla units in the area, which might be a county over. And you go to area command meetings, you're meeting these other captains that you were just in the course with, and their guerrilla or G chief, so their guerrilla commander, and linking everything together to a unified effort. And then, you cross the threshold of violence, and you're doing like really big objectives, sometimes urban stuff, and doing this whole campaign. At the end of it, it's all in the fictional country of Pineland.
Yes.
And then at the end of it, all the teams all across the state are actioning their major targets at once. So all the intel you're getting and all the updates goes up, like, how did that team do? but yeah, by the end of it, you essentially, hopefully, overthrow, the government, and they install their own people, and you go through the repatriation of, your guerrilla force to either disarm or transition into, police or military, and they do that whole thing in 2 weeks for the actual exercise, plus 2 weeks of prep, integrating every small unit tactics, survival, evasion, resistance, escape, particular job training, and bring it all together. And it's amazing. I think between the captain's course and Robin Sage, that's actually for anybody who wants to get into writing thrillers, like go through the Q course. Like, even if you don't get the combat, like the situations they throw you in are so crazy that like you'll have inspiration for a lifetime. Like, no question.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, you guys have like such a great pipeline, particularly, well, for everybody, but particularly for officers when compared to naval special warfare. Like, we have a junior officer training course now that I got to be the OIC for as I was getting out, and it was actually one of the most fulfilling assignments of my time in uniform, just passing on those lessons and stuff like that. But I mean, your guys is amazing. And I worked with SF quite a bit when I was in uniform in the Philippines, had an amazing warrant officer from first group. And I got out there, and I'd been preparing to go to Afghanistan, but ended up going to the Philippines and the Southern Island chain. And just, he was so awesome. And finding out about your guys' warrant officer program for SF in particular. And I was just like, man, I want to go do that. I want that training. That I just started reading to kind of catch up with him because in Philippines, we had some time on our hands. So got in some pretty good shape. I was doing a lot of reading. We had a few different campaigns that we did in support of the Philippine Marine unit down there. But
you were running against Abu Sayyaf?
Yeah, I mean, yes-ish, or maybe some gangster. I mean, it was a lot of criminal enterprises more so at that point than actual quote unquote terrorism. But it was so interesting. I learned a ton from the Filipino Marines I was working with. I took on the role of like a student to that Marine. He was a brigadier general. And just kind of took on the role of student and him being a mentor. And I just learned so much about that area and what they've been fighting for 100 plus years down there. But the SF guys I work with, I had more SF guys working with them than I had SEALs. And then when I ended up in Basra in Iraq for the withdrawal, and then I had more SF guys also in those outstations when I was a troop commander out there. But man, you guys have awesome training. It's just, you come out of there just about as well prepared, I think, as you can be without having, real world. If you didn't have any real world experience, you come out of there so well prepared. So you come out of there, and now you get your team, and where do you go?
Afghanistan. I actually, before I went on a team, before they had a team opening for me, they put me on. They were like, okay, you're deploying in 2 weeks and you're taking over. They had like an ad hoc split team. So Canadian SOF had been running the Afghan Special Operations Schoolhouse out of Camp Moorhead, training the Afghan commandos, the Afghan Special Forces. So Canadian SOF had it, and it was transitioning over to Green Beret. So the next deployment, it was going to be an ODA mission. A full SF team was going to go. But to patch the interim, they handed it off to like this former team sergeant. He put together like an ad hoc split team, so like half of an ODA. So every specialty is represented because there's 2 of everything on a full team, and needed an officer. So I showed up, and they were like, hey, this is Chuck. He's your new, and you're going. And he was like, yep, I just got back from PDSS, like the pre-deployment. Here's the mission set. Here's everything. And we deployed really, really quick over to Camp Moorhead. And I had to spend a few months as like the advisor to the Afghan colonel in charge of the Special Operations Schoolhouse. And then we had each respective job special. And I was running, we had Slovak, civil affairs, PSYOPs people. It was like a big advisory team to field all the different segments of the schoolhouse. So we got to I got like pretty much a preview of like an SF, at least training mission. It wasn't a combat mission. Although we did, we lost some guys, but it was like VBIT in Kabul type stuff. It wasn't, ground combat. So I got to do that, which is a great experience and just a total bonus. My team time hadn't even started yet because that's a finite clock on the officer side. Came back and got assigned to a ODA. It was a mountain team, but third group did not place any emphasis on mountains, so they didn't care. My battalion commander was like, why am I getting like and he's a phenomenal. If he called me tomorrow, it was like, zombie apocalypse, Kasper, I need you. Like, I'd be like, got it. I will be there. He's about to get his star, I think. So, coming off command of 7th Group now, but one of the greatest human beings I've ever met. And he was like, Jason, why do I have like a con op for like mountain training? And I was like, we're a mountain team task force. Like, when was the last time this is used real world? It's like 7th Group, 2007, like, this CASA going down with these sensitive materials at 7,000 feet or whatever. And they relayed like the climbing teams and sent up like ran pitches for this team to recover materials. It's like, okay, check it out. I have nothing in my chart that says I have to maintain this capability. He's like, you're going to Afghanistan in a few months, like shoot, move, communicate, deploy, and kill people. And I was like, got it, sir. So we did the basic stuff to maintain certification as a mountain team. But, the focus is all just straight combat. So then we deployed 2015. And that was a miracle trip because in a lot of places in the country, they knew the ROE then. It was under a resolute support mission, non-combat operations. So basically, the paradigm is that you take your commando battalion in, or like a company of commandos with some Afghan special forces. You go to a hot area, take over an enemy compound, and you wait for 24 hours and let them come to you and kill as many people as you can. But in a lot of places in the country, like that ROE was well known. So in most places, they would, cool, Americans are here. Everybody sits it out, waits 24, 36 hours. Americans leave and they're back to doing their thing. In Logar and Wardak, they would run to their deaths. Like it was crazy. So that's where my team was. We ended up, we were running out of Shank. So we had like a great trip, like every mission, they were just like coming out of the woodwork for like, 36, sometimes, we get extended to like 50 hours on the ground. And like other teams would send their new guys to our team to be like an attachment for a mission. So their guys would get some combat experience. So we were like a really, really perfect spot with the best guys possible, treated it like Vegas. What happens in the 3-6 mission stays in the 3-6 mission, and got great experience for everybody. And, sadly, by that time, like everybody, the writing's on the wall for Afghanistan. I came out of my 2010 trip. I remember going into it as a newly commissioned West Point officer. And I remember having a conversation with my parents, like via cell phone, like right after we got in country. I'm like, hey, how's it going over there? Because the news looks a little sketchy. I was like, oh, yeah, it's good. Like, we just need to surge and it's going to be, I gave like the party line. It's going to be great. And I came off that deployment. And I talked to my mother recently. She's like, I remember this conversation vividly. We came off the deployment. I was like, oh, it's all going to fall apart the second we leave. Everybody knew that. No administration wanted to bite the bullet. And I had a company commander explain that to me, an SF company commander. It's like, what department's in charge of the overarching strategy here? And I was like, no, sir, I don't. And he was like, there isn't one. So he's like, everybody's kicking the can down the road. Everybody knows how it's going to end. So when my team got there, I flew over a little early into Afghanistan. My team got there. This is not something you envision when you take the oath and you swear in front of the flag. And I was like, okay, there's nothing in Afghanistan worth dying for. Nobody wants to be the last American killed in Afghanistan. I was like, this is going to be about just like, we're going to have fun. Like, we're going to do combat. We're going to do the job best of our abilities. Missions, they want to stack bodies. We'll stack bodies, and I want us to push it like right up to the edge of an American getting killed and stop at that threshold. And that was the guidance I gave, complete with like my 18 Fox, the intelligence sergeant. He showed up and I was like, listen, man, I was like, you don't need to come to team meetings. I don't care like what you do for PT. It's like your only job is to meet these intelligence thresholds to get us out the door. I want you to plan, a mission set progression throughout the deployment for geographic proximity near to far and for risk to us, least dangerous to most dangerous. And we're going to build a campaign plan. I want to do like an infiltration on Afghan special mission wing, like Afghan pilots flying their Hinds. I was like, that's a bucket list thing. Getting into Wardak province, Tangi Valley, if we can get to Extortion 17 site. These are bucket list things and things that the previous team like wanted to do and like couldn't piece together or whatever. And I didn't see him for like 3 days. And, he's just running around liaising with the intel people and everything, not in any team meetings. And he came back on like day 4 and he had everything laid out. He's like, okay, this town, this is how we're going to, build it. And in terms of approval, we take this, they'll approve that. Had this great campaign plan. We executed it really well. So did the special mission wing infill, which was that's terrifying. If you fly with Afghan pilots, I mean,
Are they flying on nods at the time?
They fly nods, but and this is okay. So here's probably the only silver lining to the fact that Afghanistan has completely collapsed and fallen back to the Taliban is I don't have to censor this, but the Special Mission Wing is of 2015. They could only fly operationally like 2 days a month, the top of loom cycle. Pretty much you can see at night. Like you don't need nods, full moon, and needed Apaches dropping flares as the landing area. We did it anyway, just because America. It's like, when are you going to get a chance to do this again? Right. And it's pretty harrowing. Like the landing on that's like skipping a stone across the ground. Really hard landings, incredibly hard landings. Just the birds scattered all over, and guys running out, trying to get where we're going. We did that. We did get within, I think, 1.5 kilometers of the extortion 17 site, driving through the Tangi, like. And it was creepy because you're seeing these abandoned fobs, that guys lost a lot of lives and limbs, like established, maintained, and there's just like empty HESCO barriers and old checkpoints and stuff. So yeah, we had a really incredible trip that time. Had dude get shot like top of the plate, and he's got that plate signed now by every member of the team.
Wow!
Like ammo resupplies, medevacs.
So you're getting after it.
Yeah, like equipment resupply. We need another armored plate. Like put it on the bird, get it out here. And again, to throw another plug for pilots, man, just the dust off pilots. Yeah. We flew, there's 160th too, but we had like regular Army dust off, and they're crazy. we had Afghans, so it's not like an American bleeding out. We had, when our commandos would get shot up, we had some KIA or some killed in action. Some wounded, and then the Taliban were just obviously shooting indiscriminately. So civilians would get hit, and we'd bring them to our position and take them on the medevacs. And we had so fun term, the Dushka, right? The huge belt-fed heavy machine gun that could take down helicopters. It's one of 2 times I've ever seen my team sergeant scared. One was when we heard an American got hit. And we both looked at each other and went, fuck. And it turned out to be like, we both ran, and it turned out to be the guy got shot in the plate. Yeah. It's fine. And then the sniper dialed him in. And then the second time was a different objective. And we just heard a Dushka open up. Dushka, the name of the weapon's like DSHKA, but in Russian, Dushka means like sweetie, like girlfriend. So they call it, the soldiers started calling it the Dushka. But it's scary. Like it can do some damage. And we heard one of those open up, and I saw my team sergeant just shout. And at the time, I didn't realize how significant it was. And he was like, "Dashka, like get down!" And anyway, it turned out that some Afghan commando gun truck had pulled up right next to our position and opened fire without like telling us. So it ended up being fine. Point is, the Dushka is extremely serious, and we had. The UAVs the drones had identified a Dushka position. They pulled the netting off it, and they were trying to take down a bird. So we, my JTAC, my Joint Terminal Air Controller, he's like, "Hey, we got a Dushka here." This is the Air Force Combat Controller, who are just masters of all things. They support the Air Force Special Operations. They're incredible, and they'll usually deploy like with a SEAL platoon or a Special Forces ODA. You have like one of them. And they help run. Like we had a JTAC qualified guy, and he would work with the combat controller, and manage the aircraft during low traffic between gunfights and stuff. But the combat controller is just a god, and they're critical because it's also, especially 2015, it's legal considerations, right? Like you can get crucified for violating ROE and sending anything off the rails of a bird at that time. Didn't matter how many Gustav rockets you shot. Didn't matter how many mortar rounds you slung. If you shot like a Hellfire, your neck was on the chopping block for whatever reason. I still can't explain it, but it was a fact. And he was like, "We get a Dushka, like this position, like show me the drone feed." I was like, "Legal?" He's like, "Yes, hit it." So they, the Apaches took that out, and right then we had like a medevac. And I told the pilots, I was like, "Hey man, like, just so you know, we smoked the Dushka like 2 minutes ago, and there are no American casualties. This is Afghan civilians and Afghan, commandos." And they were like, "We're coming in hot." And they flew through everything and everyone and put it down and got the casualties. These are conventional Army pilots. Just incredible stuff. And then the 160th guys too, they ran a infill for us. We ended up getting extended. It was one of the situations where you can't exactly stroll out of there as planned. So we ended up staying an extra night and came back. We'd been on the ground like 50 hours. And we came back. One of the guys on base was telling me, he's like, the entire time you guys were out there, those MH-47 Chinook helicopters were sitting hooked up to fuel with the engines idling and the pilot standing by the entire time. Like, just because we were out there and they were ready to do whatever they needed to. So yeah, just tremendous. I think the aviation community as a whole, like every bit the warriors that any guy on the ground is.
Yeah, no, geez. And when you're over there and you're seeing all this and you're driving by those abandoned checkpoints and seeing those HESCO barriers and those bases and thinking about what guys sacrificed to take those positions, hold those positions, and then see them abandoned. Are you ever looking back at the congressional testimony from guys with stars on their collars that are saying, we're making progress. All we need is a little more time. All we need is a little more money. All we need is painting this picture that might be a little different from what you're seeing on the ground? And if you did, how did you feel about that?
I mean, it hurts. It hurts, even being 82nd conventional infantry and being told that we've been running out of one district, and suddenly battalion commander, who's a great guy, former unit guy, was like, hey, I want you driving up to this district and you're going to link up there and set up a whole new base and start this over in this area. There's no Americans. Like MARSOC, the Marine Raiders, were running some ops through there, but there was no standing U.S. presence. So also not a great area. So, we do all the logistical nightmare of breaking down and loading up and driving out there, recocking, trying to get security and making progress. So for instance, we had a really big gunfight there, like pretty big gunfight where we just we're rolling into the town. We'd taken IEDs. We hadn't had any direct contact yet. And just, we had, there was just a shady area in this road where it's possible IED, doesn't look, ground disturbance, something, could be nothing. Take the trucks around it. And it was a choke point. And I hopped out of my truck and ran around. I was ground guiding these trucks through this choke point. It's the friction point of the mission, trying to get the trucks across. First truck across goes up to the high ground. It's just a small hill. And as soon as the truck gets there, I just the 50 cal opens up and you just hear, the world opening up. And, between get the guns over, start back it up, start engaging. And I was on the ground. So I just, ran up the hill and the whole village was just lighting up with muzzle flashes. And I was running down the hill, looking at the vehicles, and there were mortars exploding and PK fire and just this crazy, post-apocalyptic World War II war movie soundscape, and ran down, and we had this really long, crazy, sustained gunfight. So then the next day, the district governor, who had not had any tribal leaders or village leadership come to them for help, the next day they had 30 plus leaders of various tribes in the district lined up for a massive shura because they had seen just a taste of combat power. Okay, now they can do shit for us. And ended up starting all these programs, and the government was relevant again. But then you have all the close calls and the IEDs and the gunfights, and miraculously don't lose anybody, trucks getting blown up, dudes getting Purple Hearts, but nobody dying miraculously. And my mission in life, I was the next platoon to take over from us is not going to want for anything. They're not going to have to reinvent the wheel. Meticulous records on everything down to when you get here, this is the first thing you do, second thing, third thing, these power players, you put all that together. And then the next battalion is a different unit. Battalion commander gets out and gets here and I was oh yeah, we're not occupying this district. Okay, that's it. Breakdown, head home. Wish we would have known that beforehand. And it was that going on, over and over and over at hundreds of places throughout the country for 20 years. While replacing the overall commander, back to back to back. So yeah, and it was, I got to West Point, and the book, is it Counterinsurgency by David Delula?
Mm-hmm.
Short book,
Yep.
very simple. And I had a counterinsurgency course with a special forces instructor who, great human being, really opened my eyes to a lot of stuff. Had us read that, and he was like, we're not doing any of this.
Mm.
Like, this is, I guess it's one of the books that General Petraeus referenced heavily for creating the Army counterinsurgency manual, one of his cornerstones. But it's straight up like, you invade, you have limited time, push your military forces to border control, and then police are the focus for everything inside the borders. But if there's a porous border with a friendly nation the insurgents can operate out of, you will never win. Like, you do border control immediately. And like, we didn't do that in Tora Bora 01, a small swath of border with a company of Rangers sitting a few hours flight time away. Like, unit guys, like ground branch guys, killing dudes, picking up an ICOM, hearing bin Laden's voice that close. Just crazy. And then, fast forward, great that, got bin Laden. It's certainly a historic mission in terms of like, you look at like historic special operations mission, like, my opinion, the bin Laden raid, like, that's up there with like the Sante raid. I mean, that is historically significant, logistically. I know Mark Owen downplays it, but dude, a cross border, like, that's really, really cool. What they did. Ideally, they wouldn't have had to do that 10 years after 9/11. So yeah, I don't want to get too bitter or cynical, but yeah, it hurts, Jack. It hurts my heart. I think it hurts everybody's heart. And then, I would have been fine to tune out the withdrawal, except the fact that I still had an interpreter over there who needed help. So I got roped into that whole vet network and spent 2 hours where, like, that was literally, like I told you about that 50-hour mission. The second time I stayed awake 50 hours the next time after that was literally trying to help the families, like linked in with other vets, and everybody's guys are reporting where the checkpoints are. And you're trying to put together this coherent picture with, like, you've got 4 different messaging apps you're open on your computer screen. It's 2 a.m. You're trying to tell him where he can take his 1-year-old kid and his other 2 kids and his wife, and how to get around these checkpoints and try to make it to the airport. It sucked. It sucked. It hurts. I think there's no way you're getting off emotionally easy. The vets I've talked to that are the coolest about it are the ones who've never been to Afghanistan. Nothing against them, but it's just easier to maintain an emotional attachment if you don't know the motherfuckers who are, cool. I moved out of this location, and the next day the Taliban kicked open the door and tossed everything looking for me. And then, it was rough. And then you've got guys in these vet chats who are like, hey man, my NDS, so the Afghan intelligence service, my guy made it out yesterday, and the Taliban showed up the next night, decapitated his, his brother, like left the message, like still looking for this dude, had the address. And then you start seeing these news articles where US government handed over information to the Taliban, like special immigrant visa package with addresses and names.
It's insane.
Yeah, it's horrendous.
Yeah, it gives me a lot of fuel for the novels. Very therapeutic to write. Sometimes people ask, how come they're bad guys? You have senior military leaders or politicians as bad guys. Very easily. Very therapeutic. Keeps me out of jail. And
right.
So when do you start? So you've seen a lot of combat. I mean, even with 5 years in the middle of the war at West Point and prep school, you have seen a ton of combat at this point, from conventional side, special operations side, task force side. Like, you are in it. And
I would contest that real quick. I saw a little bit of combat. And I know lots of guys, including guys I worked with, that just, like Kyle Lamb, have forgotten more combat than I've ever been to. Like, I did 6 deployments, 5 combat deployments. Like I said, my team sergeant had 15, 16.
Yeah. I mean, everything's
and then
relative,
went back
of course.
Over as a contractor. Yeah. So I think the what I can say is I worked with like true pipe hitting savages that gave me a lot of inspiration, even just from swapping stories and getting an understanding of like how things go down. That helps a lot with writing.
Yeah,
for sure.
I mean, you're being very, very humble about it, but you've been there, you've done the job. And then when do you start to notice that it's starting to affect you from a post-traumatic stress standpoint, or it's starting to affect your life or those around you, or there's some things that you might need to deal with on that front?
trying to imply that I have post-traumatic stress? Yeah, I was super fucked up. And I think not everybody gets affected equally. I had, so at West Point, I went into a spiraling depression, massive sleep issues. And I was trying to fill that hole with I started doing marathons, and then that was enough. So ultra marathons, and then skydiving. Started skydiving on my own dime in the prep school. Got on a skydiving team at West Point, which is a big deal because I don't know if you remember college, but you don't have any money. Yeah. And that's really expensive. Wind tunnel time and the jumps and the lift tickets and the gear. So it was that's the redeeming thing about West Point for me, is it was adrenaline hit. Wow. You're on the skydiving team. And then I got done with jump 235 or whatever, my sophomore year, I think. And I remember touching down and there was no adrenal rush. There was no endorphins. Wow. I was like, fuck. So then I got into base jumping and I went out and did a course one summer in Idaho off a legal bridge. And then I came back and linked up with, I'm from Kentucky. So I linked up with the Kentucky and Cincinnati crews, then got back to school, linked up with the New York crew, which they went pretty hard in the paint. My mentor's dead. But they started going out to local objects, including that big antenna you can see across the river from West Point. Keep an eye out next time you go. Oh, wow. And that was my home drop zone. So I would finish skydiving practice, sometimes drive to skydiving practice, and then go out there to catch a window of the winds at sunset. Then the weekends I was out there, I was jumping in, the city, and base jumping is, that's skydiving is cocaine. Base jumping is heroin. It's dark, it's dirty, it's highly illegal in America. So you're always running from cops.
So you're doing this while you're at West Point, while you're a cadet.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
I was
insane.
an extremely high functioning, depressive, and anyway, adrenaline junkie, got me through stuff. That's how I tried to fill the hole.
Do you realize that it's might be an issue, or are you I'm just after it? This is awesome. I'm training. I'm staying on the edge. This is just me. What are you thinking in your head right there?
I mean, for me, it came down to cool. So you feel like shit and you're fantasizing about killing yourself a few hundred times an hour. And then base jumping rewards
by base
all
jumping
that
by
darkness.
Not pulling, or by other
No. My thing was I'd always fantasize about blowing my head off. The 454 revolver, Ruger, Alaskan. I don't know why. It just, you get in these I got in these destructive head cycles, and I was like, well, this is not good. But then base jumping, when you're standing with the toes of your boots 360 feet over the earth, and you get a single parachute system on your back, and the margin of error is seconds if you do everything right. And then any type of parachute delay, pilot chute hesitation, pin hang up. And I had these things happen. But when you're standing there, all that shit's gone. You're purely in the moment. It's horrifying zen, just adrenaline coursing. And that was kind of the closest I had to the experience of combat, I guess. So I kept seeking that experience. Down to my first building was an apartment building in New York City. And I had gotten, so base rig is similar to a skydiving. We have a pin through a closing loop. And, except there's 2 pins on most base rigs. So I bought this brand new equipment, right? I put all my money into this. It's Roth IRA can wait, got 2 base rigs. So I could just do jumps back to back, and then pack during daylight hours. And anyway, my mentor, a guy named Jerry, who's he was a hardcore coke and hookers guy working, he lived in Spanish Harlem. He was really gangster, loved and hated by the base community. He kept telling me, he's you need to take out these closing loops, replace them with Dacron, a slicker material, and make them way looser. And I look back at the instructor, or the manufacturer recommendations. No, they say exactly this length, exactly this material. You occupy your time with hookers. In my head, I'm you occupy your time with hookers and blow. I think I'm going to side with the people who do this professionally. So first building, so it was a go and throw, right? Or no, I think it was a 3-second delay, a 400-foot building. So I had, you prep your pilot chute in the bridle. So you basically jump, you do a 3-second delay, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 pitch. My pilot chute inflated. It reached line extension. You're free falling over electrified tracks, electrified train tracks.
It seems like a very bad idea, by the way, for anyone listening.
Thank you. Yeah, like a lot of things I've told you about over this podcast, my judgment questionable. So anyway, it just didn't pull. And at the time, I was okay, I'm going to hold a stable body position, because your perception of time, especially when you're newer in base jump, it's just like combat. You're like, hey, we're reaching the gunfight for like 5 minutes or 45 minutes. And you're like checking your watch and piecing together the reporting to try to, for the, like even the after action review. So there's like a time distortion. So I was holding this body position. I was like, I'm getting pretty fucking low. Finally, it pulled, and I had literally enough time to like rip a quick 180 into this little park and touch down. And I was like, that was not much time under canopy. And my mentor jumped after me, and he was like, you just had the biggest pilot chute hang up. This is after we like stuff shit in the car and you drive off like you're leaving a bank heist. But he was like, you just had the biggest like pilot chute and tow malfunction. I saw it catch air, saw you falling, saw it not pulling, turned to the other guy who was with him at the top of the building and said, he's going in, and had time to say it before your parachute opened.
Wow.
And then we went back to his apartment, packed, and then we did the World Fair Tower, but that I didn't free fall it. We did a pilot chute assist. It's low enough. Yeah. So he held my bridle, and it's one of those things like that slips out of his hand. By then I know I'm dead, because that's you can't free fall that, or not with the equipment I had at the time. And then we just did it to do it. And then, that's that was my West Point experience.
Wow.
It's hating life at school, not sleeping, and then.
Because of the combat from those first 2 deployments, or was it something else?
I think so. I mean, I'm generally a pretty high strung dude, but I think I had some issues from like tasting the magic, and then going to the cesspool of, people ratting each other out and reporting their roommates for, regulations violations. And I didn't do great. Also, my engagement was imploded around that time. So
was anyone ever like, hey bro, you want to take a breath for a second, or what?
No, nobody knew I jumped. I had one guy, another mutual friend of me and Kyle's, was my West Point roommate. He had an envelope that he would open if I didn't come back from a jump.
Wow.
That was like instructions, the antenna, I will be, body will be inside the fence, like whatever, that he mercifully never had to open. But yeah, I would come back from these jumps, and I had like a Word document on my computer, and I would detail the jumps. It started like a skydiving logbook, like this pilot chute, this type of equipment, this delay, here's what was good, here's what was bad, here's what I need to work on. And then I would come back, and it'd be like 2 a.m. or whatever, and I would just write these longer passages, and then like pontificating on the meaninglessness of life and written form and everything. And I'd be like, man, this shit really calms me down. And I'd have these multi-page passages. And I was like, this feels better, like this lifts, some of the pressure. And then I was like, man, I can't jump that often because, school and the winds and stuff. So like, what if I tried fiction? So I came up with this David Rivers character and just sat down at my computer one day.
While you're at West Point?
I think it was junior year. And I wrote this scene where he infiltrates a house, comes face to face with an armed man, and kills him and walks away. And it's kind of like a cold-blooded murder type scene, which is now the first chapter of my first book. But like, I finished writing that scene and my pulse was jacked. I had adrenaline. I was like waiting for cops to burst through the door. And that's when I was like, holy shit, like I can get an adrenaline rush from like writing like an action set piece or something, like without climbing and flinging myself off top of the antenna or whatever, which I kept doing anyway. But then I wrote, and that's the whole part of my first book, was like this suicidal, depressed Ranger Regiment private who went to West Point and then was base jumping, and like the mentor described is really like Jerry. And then instead of commissioning, gets deemed medically non-commissionable and ends out and conducts this murder, and then, crosses paths with basically like a mercenary element, and just falls into this life of working as a mercenary for like a transnational criminal syndicate. So that became my whole first series, but that was the genesis basically. And it's been working for me ever since. Like I feel like writing is therapy, and that's why I started. And it was kind of like started as a survival thing, and now it's just what I love doing all day.
Now, did you keep jumping and doing base jumping while you're at like SFQ course and while you're
no,
all that sort of thing?
No, I met my wife senior year of West Point, still kept jumping. But then I calmed down a lot after meeting her. We're about to have, next month is our 10-year anniversary. So I've had a lot of time as like just a normal dude, relatively. But yeah, I calmed down a lot. And then I kept skydiving and base jumping through 82nd time. And I retired before Special Forces selection.
From base jumping.
Because from base jumping and skydiving, actually, because I had a friend who went to Ranger Regiment as a platoon leader. And before his first deployment is a Ranger Regiment platoon leader, and he was in 82nd with me. He was skydiving civilian side for fun and had an injury, immediately went to staff, do not pass go, no combat. From that point on, and I was like, that's not going to happen to me. And especially like we were talking about the timelines being so tight, I was like, I'm not getting injured.
Right.
So I retired, and I was in a position then with my wife where I was like in a much better place and could retire.
But then
I kept writing.
But then you get back into it. You're back in Afghanistan. You're doing the job. And are you having any other any other indicators that you might have to deal with some issues later while you're doing that time in Afghanistan, leading your SF team?
Yeah, I had. So everything's fine when you're on a job. Like that's when you're in combat, there's no issues. Yeah, it's when you come back that's when shit gets hard. Yeah, I had a lot of insomnia issues. Never any nightmares, never any flashbacks, never saw anything that I was, you see horrific shit, but you're like, this is the job, like this is what happens. But yeah, I would have physiologically, I would just burst awake at 2 a.m. or just not be able to sleep. Self-medicated with alcohol a lot, which works well for me. Like I'm a very happy drinker. I'm fun dad, it's like it's not invasive beyond like, this probably isn't good for long-term marital stability. Like I don't want the wife getting concerned. But yeah, mostly the sleep issues were really intense, but that I think everything comes unglued if you're not getting sleep, right? Like that throws off all your hormones, all your emotional stability. And you get to the point I would have, especially after I got out of the Army, where I would have such rough patches of sleep where I'd be lucky to get a few hours a night, like even with alcohol, that like I would ask my wife to drive when we went places.
You're just too tired to drive.
Yeah. You literally like, I shouldn't be operating a motor vehicle just from sleep debt. And I tried a bunch after I got out. I think it's when it hit me the worst. And I tried a bunch of different therapies and everything.
What year did you get out?
Went on terminal leave November 2016.
So you got out before,
which is when I hit. Yeah, I would have had to do another 9 years because the West Point stuff doesn't count, nor should it.
Interesting.
I would have had to do another 9 years, but my deal with my wife, she never liked the military. She never adapted. And I told her, like, you support me through SF team time and I will get out. I'll move wherever you want. I can write from anywhere. So terminal leave, yeah, November 2016, the day I like took off the uniform, like that night's when I hit like publish on like Amazon, like self-publishing my first book as a nobody. And then, yeah, January 2017 was my official ETS, but I was on leave pretty much that whole time. So,
and you haven't,
after that.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No, I was going to say, are you having some issues during that time? And I mean, obviously you're exploring them in the pages of your novels and it's working as therapy, but you're not sleeping. And, a lot of guys obviously come back and have the Ambien there on Vampire Hours overseas. And then you throw a little TBI in there, maybe some post-traumatic stress in there, some marital problems in there, some alcohol problems in there. And it becomes this, caustic cocktail. And they start needing to deal with each and every one of those things and it becomes overwhelming. And then they're not on the job, like you said, they're home. And haven't found that next mission, haven't found that next passion yet. So and a lot of guys have some serious issues. Did they start getting worse for you after you got out and before you, and how long was it before you were like, hey, I need to start some sort of a treatment here?
I started treatment pretty much right when I left.
Oh, wow.
The only thing I asked the VA for was like, do you have anything that'll help me sleep? And they gave me, I think, trazodone, and I took it one night and just, that's a half-a household drug to have around the medicine cabinet. And I think I took it like one night and it was just, I felt like I got a lobotomy. Like I couldn't sleep, couldn't think, which normally I'll just get a glass of bourbon and write, or a few glasses of bourbon and write. And that was like, I couldn't think, I couldn't function. And I think I might've done it 1 or 2 nights and I started feeling depressed, threw the bottle away, went back to bourbon. And then I started trying, EMDR, cognitive processing therapy, like one thing, another thing.
Is that the eye movement stuff and like the gyro stuff and the, like there's.
Yep.
And the brain, is that what is the brain treatment stuff where you actually get zapped?
I haven't gotten that. The metal, was it metal resonance therapy or something? Mark Owen's done it. Like that got me curious. That sounds, and I know Tom Satterley's a unit guy. I don't know him, but he wrote a book called All Secure, which is like a deep dive into PTSD and his whole journey. And he works actively as his like life's purpose now, is like helping vets. And he credited that. There's also a guy, name's escaping me, but a DevGru guy who wrote a book called Mob 6, which I also read. And interestingly enough, those are 2 tier 1 top of their trade career NCOs during peak wartime. Both books open, and they're both good books. Both books open with them with like a gun in their mouth or to their head. And both books end with them talking about that magnetic resonance therapy as helping them. So I haven't tried that. It's pretty pricey. I did the EMDR, that cognitive processing therapy, and then I would just get angry. Like none of it worked. No, I even did the stellate ganglion block for a while, which is a temporary relief. That's they put a needle in your neck.
Yeah, what is that
they
about?
Inject something. That's what Dakota Myers does, which I think is how I found out about it.
Is it like a blocker of some sort, or does it open things up? Or what?
They inject some medicine into like a nerve bundle in your neck, and it's somehow linked to like the fight or flight instinct. And you can literally get that, and they insert it with an X-ray, and then for me, they would pull it out, and I would be so calm, like no muscle tension, and I would sleep great. But it was a finite shelf life on how long it works. So I went in for like repeated treatments and stuff. And eventually, it's like it was a quick fix for me.
So it's not addressing root causes as they say.
Yeah, I think everybody has different experiences, but then what I tried,
I kind of like my flight or flight.
Yeah, well, you need it. I live between a Trader Joe's and a Whole Foods. Like I'm not exactly in a high crime area. This is like one of the Cary, North Carolina. It's like the town's baptized in soy milk. It's super yuppie.
How many times did you do that in the neck? How long did you do that for?
Oh, I've probably done, I don't know, 10 or 12 rounds of it.
Wow. How long between treatments?
I would go a few months between, couple months between.
And then when it started getting bad again, you'd go back and get another one. Is that how that went? Wow.
Yeah. And VA paid for it. I've had good experience with the VA, but then when it was working and I just happened to meet a dude, I'd met him like once before and just, hey, we're doing like a bourbon tasting, come over to the house. And he came over and just noticed this like bruise on my neck. And this guy's a doctor. And he's like, what is that? And I was like, oh, and I was explaining like the SGD shit to him. And he was like, oh, dude, you need to go down to Charleston. You're going to look at my buddy who works at this clinic. You're doing ketamine. And I was like, what are you talking about? I had no idea. And
ketamine's you're not messing around when you're doing some ketamine. Like that's some serious stuff.
It's pretty awesome. It's really clean. The dose they give you, it's a significant dose. Like you go off to the spirit world, I see like crazy colors and like you're in like soaring through this 3-dimensional like starscape for me.
And what are they trying to do with that? Like when you walked in there, when you heard about it, what was the draw? Was it like, hey, this is going to help me explore some things that I'm dealing with? Or was it like, hey, this is going to cure me, or this is going to like, what are you going there? What outcome are you looking for? And what are they hoping that you can get out of it?
So the draw for me was like, I tried everything. Yeah. And at that point, my sleep was still shit. I was doing awful. Like I was still writing, but that was like the only good thing I could say, other than that, I was not in a great place, just sucking physiologically. You're just sucking every day. It feels like you got hit in the head with a frying pan because you're so sleep deprived. And then alcohol is the only thing that helps, like better than any other treatment for me personally. I'm not recommending that. But at that point, the doctor was like trying to explain to me, he's like, nobody really understands how this works, but there's theories on this, theories on that. And I was like, doc, you can play jazz. I don't give a shit. Like stick needles in my eye, whatever. Play jazz, have fun.
Because you're like you're at the end of a rope at this point. Is that why you're?
Yeah. I mean, it's just the alternative is either to try this or just resign yourself to like I'm going to feel like shit the rest of my life.
So you're not thinking about taking your own life. You're just feeling horrible.
Right. Yeah, at that time for sure. And it's one of those things like, cool, I can fake the funk with my family, and like a good day is when they think I'm fine. But that's not how I want to live my life. It's not how I want to raise my kids. And I think, for me, especially the kids, it was a big kick in the ass at the time. I just had one daughter. But it's one of those things where like kids pick up on everything, right? And I can tell you what my dad taught me, and I can tell you what I learned from my dad. And he taught me, like, express yourself, like be a good person, like whatever. Yeah, you can talk to me about anything. And what I, learned from him was like, drink your feelings, be stoic. You don't, like, pretty much be the strong man for your family. And he didn't teach me any of that, but that's what I saw, like I saw, like, this guy never complains. This guy never. So I was very aware of I didn't want my daughter seeing me suboptimal and not being as present as I could be, and just forcing, like tamping everything down, because I didn't want her growing up like that and thinking that was the way it should be. So I was trying to lead by example, try everything. And this is like kind of the last option before, I guess, short of that magnetic therapy, which I don't think I'd heard of at the time. So anyway, yeah, I did. I stayed down there in Charleston for 5 days, did 5 rounds of it. So they typically, and there's ketamine clinics everywhere now. The science isn't well understood.
Is it acting as a psychedelic in these kind of doses, or what is it doing?
Yeah. So it's the drug is a surgical anesthetic is what it's created for. But now there's a lot of different applications within clinical use, one of which is for treatment of like depression, addiction, post-traumatic stress. And I know that I did this 5 days and, did like 1 hour sessions. So you go off in the spirit world for an hour and then you come out, but within like 20 minutes, it's out of your bloodstream.
Really?
Like you can drive.
So you're leaving, you leave the clinic, you go to the hotel.
It's really clean. Yeah. They're like, sit here as long as you want. And yeah, I would wait or sit in my car and wait till I was like, okay, I'm good. And it's cleans out of your system pretty quickly. But actually, after I left, I didn't notice a huge difference for a while. And then it was like everything lifted. It was just like a cognitive reset. All that physiological, like muscle tension and sleep issues and everything just kind of went away. And now I go in, I get it every 3 to 4 months. Okay. And like during the Afghanistan withdrawal, shit got out of hand. And I just had gone 5 months without it. And I could just feel the walls closing in. And I was like, check my calendar. I was like, oh man, I haven't gotten that in a while. Got one more and I was fine. Like that day.
No kidding. So. And you're going for one. So the first time was 5 treatments over a week-long period?
It's going to vary by doctor. But yeah, the guy I went to, he did 5 days in a row. And then after that was like basically coming from maintenance. Now there's different doctors who do different ways. And I talked about this quite unintentionally. You think Kyle Land's a huge tough guy, and he is, but I went on to his podcast. He's like Barbara Walters. Yeah. Like he gets you to open up, and I'm like crying, like, oh, Kyle, it's so beautiful. But I talked about it just inadvertently. Yeah. I don't even know how we ended up talking about it. But anyway, after I did that podcast, I had people with PTSD, veteran and non-veteran. Another guy's like first responder. Another guy who's like lifelong, just depressed. He's just depression. Mm-hmm. And they had like heard the podcast, tried it, and were like, this has turned my whole life around. Wow. Like this pulled me out of like a really dark place. So I think for anybody who is tried or is frustrated by lack of options, it's definitely worth trying. There's ketamine clinics popping up everywhere that will do it with like a PTSD diagnosis or a depression diagnosis. And it's definitely worth trying. I've heard a lot of success stories, and the doctors told me a lot of stories of, parents whose kids, like they walked in and found their kid killed themselves, stuff like that, where they're dealing with some kind of trauma, and come out of that with like new perspective, kind of a reset. So I think it's worth trying.
Interesting.
If, you're searching for options for anybody listening.
Yeah. But what is it? So the first time you went there, was each one of those 5 days a different experience when you got the,
yeah.
ketamine?
Yeah. It's all, you trip balls, Jack. You trip balls. But yeah, every time
down
different.
Just in case, or like you just
no, you just put on like an eye mask, noise canceling headphones with just, I don't know, acid junkie music, like instrumental, like musical score type stuff. Okay. And then you just relax, drift off into it, and then you see what you see, you go where you go. Sometimes it's like coherent, you have realization. Sometimes it's just like crazy psychedelic, and then you come out of it. But that whatever it does in your brain works usually very shortly thereafter. For me, the first time, that first 5 days, it took a while, and then I just felt it. And now I feel same day I come out of the trip, and it's like I feel different,
just relaxed,
and it lasts for months.
Interesting.
Yep.
And was that helping you deal with any specific incident in particular, or was it just this build up over time of all these different stressors and whatever else was maybe your body beginning, but needing that adrenaline rush for whatever reason from base jumping and all the rest of it. Was it helping you deal with something specific, or was it just like all this buildup that it's helping you now take a breath and reset and move forward, more relaxed and able to get sleep?
Yeah, I don't think there's anything specific. My best guess would be build up. And if I'm trying to pick incidents, like the toughest thing, and I know everybody's seen is like the dead civilians, right? Like the civilians that drive over that IED that was meant for you or get shot up by the Taliban, especially like kids, like that shit's tough. And I say that because I know there were a few times like where I was doing other types of therapy where like that came out, like the pile of dead kids, the civilians pretty much, because it's all fun and games when it's you and the bad guys or you and the enemy, however you want to phrase it. I think a lot of the guys that I fought were running to the sound of the guns like we were, like you had that calling, like cool, especially in Afghanistan, you have nothing else to do. I would pick up an AK and run to whoever, cool, a bunch of Americans dressed up like RoboCop, I'm in. But yeah, I think it's all fun and games, and it's that level playing field. Like the civilians, like that hurts, So if I had to pick something, yeah, I would say like the incidents of civilians are the most painful. But yeah, I can't point to anything specific. I think it's just war, and probably I'm just like a high strung dude. I've got multiple friends who are like coke users that have separately told me like, you can never do cocaine because you're way too high strung as is. I'm like, okay, I will not ever try. I wouldn't have tried it anyway, but all good.
Oh man. And then when people reach out to you, knowing that you're a veteran and, you've gone through some of these issues, when guys reach out to you, where do you point them, or what do you tell them if someone's saying, hey, I'm having these similar issues to you, or I'm dealing with maybe some TBI or some post-traumatic stress and don't really know what to do. And I'm drinking too much. I'm on this Ambien. My marriage is falling apart, whatever. But where do you point them, or how do you deal with people that reach out to you like that?
Yeah, so I pretty much like I don't have a script. Like I answer everybody, I answer every reader, like I answer hate mail individually. But yeah, like when people reach out with trauma, and I got that even before Kyle Landspike, people just like my first series is drenched in PTSD. It's basically you can tell like this cat was working through his issues. Very PTSD without me intending that. It's just how everything came out. So I heard a lot of people like childhood abuse or vets and everything. And I just respond to everybody like individually, like based on what they told me. And then I kind of tell them like, it's totally okay. Like, glad you're talking about. I've got a woman just recently, it's like pouring out stuff she's never told anybody. And I'm sorry for bothering you. It's like, no, like you can always vent. I get vets and people all the time. And like, the problem is when you don't talk about it, like, please like vent, like, let's talk about it. But I pretty much, I think the one takeaway is like, I don't think there's a one size fits all solution. If there was, it would be super easy and the VA would understand it. But holy shit, like have a look at the disability paperwork. It's like PTSD/TBI/alcohol/insomnia is like one rating. Like they can't figure that out. Nobody understands the micro TBI of like all the door charges, all the firing machine guns or rockets from a confined space, but those have like certain G forces. There's a former SEAL, Dr. Parsley, who like talks about this at length, and he studies this stuff. Yeah, you're enduring like these G forces, pretty significant, the jumps where you black out on the drop zone. I don't think there's a one size fits all solution. And I know from talking to people who have success stories, like, I don't think I've heard the same two ways. Like this guy or, this woman has a therapy dog combined with like a certain medication. And that's as good as she's going to do. Like lifetime first responder, career first responder, seen horrible stuff, natural disasters. Other guys do. I've heard people who like just going in and talking to a therapist at a Mogadishu vet who told me he was in with the Rangers for Battle of Mogadishu and was drinking like a fifth a night. Yeah, he would go to the class 6 every week, pick up his case, and that would last him the week. Jeez. And anyway, so that battle was in 93, and he recently told me because he like pulled me out of a party. This is pre 2020 ketamine. He saw I was wearing like an SF ring, and he's like, "Oh, what group were you in?" I was like, "Oh, 30. What were you in?" He's like, "Oh, it's 375." I was like, "I was in 375." Like, we just become best friends. And I was like, "Oh, when were you in?" And he said years that included Mogadishu. And I was like, "Oh shit, did you go? What company were you in?" He's like, "Yeah, I was, Bravo company, first QRF." And then like we were talking for a bit, and then like later he was like, "Hey man, can I talk to you outside?" And he was like, pulled me aside, like, "I can see you're fucked up." And I was like, "Yeah, you're good assessment." So anyway, for work for him was like, he's like, "I found a really good therapist that I could go in and talk to, once a week, and now I can sleep 5 nights a week on average." And that's for decades after. Some people like do well with the talking therapy where you just, hey, there's no EMDR, flappy vibrating paddles, which works for some people. Other people like me try ketamine and something clicks. Dakota Meyer, as he said, like he swears by the stellate ganglion block, SGB. And while especially the tier 1 guys, you get that MRT therapy, or like that turned my life around, saved my marriage, saved my life. So I think it's a matter of trying different things and finding what works for like you as an individual. I wish there was an easy answer. I just don't think there is. Or if there is, we haven't found it yet.
Yeah. And there's some universities are doing research into this sort of thing, right? Doesn't Johns Hopkins have
Johns Hopkins, yeah, they have a psychedelic center. You can go on Spotify. They've got a 4-hour playlist, and they lay you down on the couch and administer psilocybin, like the mushroom drug, like the magic mushroom drug, and lay you on a couch and play this 4-hour soundtrack that you can play if you want to go in for your own, ketamine treatment or recreational mushrooms. I don't know.
Are they studying you as part of this? Is this because it's a university?
Yeah, but they've had massive. They're working with MDMA, ketamine, psilocybin, and I'm not sure if there's anything else. But they're having like massive gains, like 30-year hardcore addicts and people that have had multiple suicide attempts. Turning around like in a clinical setting, and they're documenting all this, and it'll all be fielded to the greater medical community, which regrettably will probably be too late to save, a lot of people. Like every day, the list of suicides builds. But I think in the meantime, as a matter of survival, it's incumbent upon every individual to like try different things and see what works for them. Like that's what we owe our families and all the people who didn't come back from overseas, and all the people who came back and then killed themselves because they didn't, they couldn't deal with their own demons. And it hurts. I mean, that's another thing that hurts the most, the suicides. When you guys been to hell and back multiple times, decorated war hero, and then never shows any weakness, and then one day punches his own ticket, like, and you're like I had a guy on my team right before I left, or actually right after I left the team. I was getting ready I was worried about my first book, and I was getting out of the army, and publishing a book literally about suicidal depression and post-traumatic stress, whether I knew it at the time or not. And like found out this guy on my team who's just like me, like the closest equivalent to me in terms of like interests, age, like where we're from, hero of a human being, Valor Awards, saved a lot of lives in a green on blue. It's like the guy who stopped it, and I found out about that, and that kind of hit me. And it's like, dude, I've drank with this guy. He's been over to my house. Our wives know each other. Like we could tell each other anything. And I just never talked about my own issues, just never came up. And if he had been around a month later and like read that book, not dedicated to him, like would he have reached out? Would he have talked to me about it? Would that have helped? I mean, who knows? But that's where I was kind of like, okay, fuck it. I'm never again like keeping quiet about anything. If somebody wants to know, I'll tell them. Like if I can help somebody, I will. Because for a long time, especially if you're trying to get into special operations, Robert Gates did that lift for the top secret clearance, where it used to be, have you done any therapy whatsoever? Robert Gates, as Secretary of Defense, changed it to, any therapy for outside of post-traumatic stress. You don't have to claim it. Which I know was one of my concerns. And I was getting my top secret clearance. I was like, I'm not telling them I'm fucking depressed. I didn't tell them I was arrested for base jumping. I talked to a lawyer before I did that interview, and they're like, any arrests? And I was like, yeah, there was one. I was in a park, and, me and a buddy like jumped off a waterfall. And she's like, were you thinking about ending your life? I was like, no. I was like, people do it all the time. You're just not supposed to get caught. It's true. What I didn't say was like the waterfall it's a 205-foot platform. And I'd been training all summer to do this as a free fall, like a go and throw with like a super like toxic 46 pilot chute, which is like the Grand Pumbaa of low altitude free fall pilot chutes at the time. And I've been working down my free fall altitudes, and then I did it, and then we get arrested. And then there's an officer at West Point who like intervened to save me.
Wow.
but I literally glossed over that. I certainly wasn't going to admit to anything else. And now, like, thanks to Robert Gates, that's been lifted. But I know even when I submitted my my SF resume, right, to get into selection, you have to do resume, what are your interests, whatever. And I was like, writing. And he was like, take that shit off. Do not ever tell anybody you write. Like, the community is very memoir sensitive, and just put a lid on that until you get out. I was like, got it.
I want to ask you about writing. Like, you have a lot of books out there. How many are there? Like 11, 12? What do you have? You have a ton.
I'm working on 16 now. 15's in editing. I'm working on 16 now.
That is wild. And so when did the first one come out?
November 2016.
November 2016. You've been busy.
It was just, yeah. I do pretty quick turns now. First book was on a wing and a prayer, and I was like, it was so stressful getting that ready for editing. I was like, I can't make a career of this. And I also realized the other 2 books I'd written were absolute shit and unworkable. I rewrote the first book from scratch, sent it off, and I was like, never again. And then I started studying craft and Robert McKee, and started a process like the screenwriting with the note cards, act sequences, scenes, and made a process and worked through that over and over. And then just organically you cycle through that quicker. Stuff that used to take me 2 weeks of messing with note cards, I can do in like 4 hours.
Oh, wow.
Just by getting the reps of committing to a process and then refining it as I go.
Nice. And what is that? We have a couple minutes left, but what is that process? Because I'm going to take some notes on it right here. See if I can speed mine up.
Yeah, and I can send you over screenshots. But yeah, I basically do a storyboard with like 15 plot beats and everything, as per like Save the Cat Writes a Novel by Jessica Brody. She has a core chord structure, and I do that just to get an idea of like, where do these events go? How do they fit into the story structure? Then I go down to color-coded note cards and I build out the acts, like 5 to 6 acts per book. What's the major turning point? What's the value that shifts, as per like Robert McKee in his book Story. Once I have the acts, then I break down to a different color note card for sequences, which is 3 to 5 scenes, generally 3 to 5 sequences per act. And once I have those, I spread those apart, and then use a different color to do these scenes of that act.
Wow. That is a process.
Basically it is a process. Yeah. And then I basically got the board, the note cards, and you refine the idea in your head. And then I write the outline.
Oh, wow.
And then I write off that outline, and it can be anywhere from 50 to 80% accurate by the time I'm done writing, but it gives me enough of a roadmap to go off of.
No kidding. So for someone that just heard that you have 16 books out there, where would you recommend that they start?
For military thriller readers, just start with Enemies of My Country, which is my current series. If you really like that, you can go back to the American Mercenary series, the first 6 books I ever wrote. The very few surviving cast members from that go on a new story arc. So it's the same protagonist, but for conventional military thriller readers, start with The Enemies of My Country. And then if you want like non-violent action and technical heist stuff, I've got the Spider Heist series, which is like a very, very strong like female protagonist that's trying to weed chauvinists out of my readership after getting a couple disturbing emails. Yeah, and that's it.
No kidding. And this is a standalone, right? Her Dark Silence?
Her Dark Silence was ketamine inspired.
Okay.
That was like a standalone. I knew I'd never make any money off it. You can't afford to advertise one book as a standalone. But I was like, I did the ketamine stuff, and I was like, oh, this would be a great thriller plot. And then I created that.
Well, now everybody's going to go to this after our conversation and talking about what we just talked about. I bet everyone's going to go grab this one.
Kyle liked it. I have no idea. I'm surprised.
Yeah.
I was like, that's the last book of mine you should read. He's like, I read it in one sitting. So
oh man. Dude, thank you so much for spending this time and being so open about those struggles and treatments. Because I know there are so many people out there, not just veterans, but anyone dealing with trauma that's out there searching for something. Search for something that's going to help them, get up the next day and keep moving forward. And to hear all those different things that you tried and the ones that you found that worked, I think that's going to be incredibly helpful to people. And I'm just so appreciative that you share your story, because you're probably, you are helping a ton of people who you'll never hear from. That's just how today works with social channels and podcasts and all the rest of it. So, man, thank you so much for coming on and sharing that, and once again for helping as many people as you do.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks so much for having me. It's great talking.
I hope we can meet up in person one of these days soon.
Absolutely.
Awesome, man. You take care.
I owe you a beer. At least.
All right,
Thanks, Jack.
Take care. Navy Federal Credit Union. The name would suggest that it is just for members of the Navy, but that's not true. It is open to all members of the military, regardless of branch, veterans and their families. So go to NavyFederal.org, check them out. Federally insured by NCUA. They have certainly financed a few of my motorcycles over the years. I've been a member since 1996. So car loans, home loans, motorcycle loans, whatever it might be sure to check them out. And if you're just getting started and need some help investing, they can help you there too. So be sure and check out NavyFederal.org. I want to thank my friends at Black Rifle Coffee for sponsoring the Danger Close podcast. I've been a huge fan for the longest time. Drink Black Rifle Coffee every day. And if you keep your eyes peeled, you will notice that perhaps Chris Pratt is wearing a Black Rifle Coffee t-shirt, not unsimilar to this one, in the Amazon series adaptation of The Terminal List. Now you can go to blackriflecoffee.com/dangerclose and use code DangerClose20 at checkout for 20% off your purchase and your first coffee club order. Black Rifle Coffee, America's coffee. Keep crushing. All right, let's talk about 10,000.cc. So 10,000, awesome company. If you have tried their interval shorts or their tactical shorts, which these are right here, you know that you are not going back to anything else. These things are awesome. And I got a pair of pants from them recently too. And man, amazing. I've worn a lot of shorts over the years, obviously being a West Coast SEAL at Team 5 when I started out. So that was kind of the thing. But I have worn a lot of shorts, and these ones, hands down, the best. I mean, that's just how it goes. They were tested by over 50 special operations members in their testing phase. So it makes sense that they're awesome, but definitely try these out. Go to 10,000.cc, follow them on Instagram, same thing, 10,000.cc on Instagram. But go to the website, check it out. Super easy to order. There's not crazy amount of different options. So, and then there's packages on there as well. I mean, they just do a fantastic job in all that they do. Free shipping, free returns. Go to 10,000.cc/DangerClose15 to receive 15% off your purchase. That's 10,000.cc/DangerClose15. So definitely do that. Get your 15% off. I definitely recommend both the interval short and the tactical short. They are both awesome. And I'll be wearing these pants a lot more here. Actually, I'm going to go running in these because I'm getting back after it. It is that time. It's been a while since I've gotten out there and gotten after it and doing anything other than skiing or hiking or playing with the kids or hunting or whatever. But time to get back on it. So running in the mornings, doing some burpees, just that's about it for now, because I still have to write books, still have to do screenplays, do all that sort of thing. So, but getting out there to clear my head in the mornings in the tactical short. Yes. So once again, 10,000.cc /DangerClose15 for 15% off your order. You will not regret it. Welcome to the gear highlight portion of the Danger Close podcast. I want to talk today a little bit about WarPaw Wine, and you can go to warpaw.com, check it out. Look at that bottle. My buddy Andrew Arabito, former teammate SEAL, he's been on the podcast before. You know him as the owner, founder, operator of Half Face Blades, right here, of which you know I am a fan if you've read the novels or followed me for a half a minute on the social channels. But WarPaw Wine, I am so excited to give this a shot. I need to get another bottle though, because I want to save one and then I want to drink one. But what a great label that is. And you just might find it in the next James Reese thriller, In the Blood, which is coming out on May 17th. This just might be in those pages. So Beto, love what you're doing out there, my friend. Thank you so much for the bottle. Sincerely appreciated. And for those of you who do not have a Half Face Blade, I know they're kind of hard to come by, but I think they do drops, every Friday, I think. And if you've read the books, you'll remember that one from the Terminal List right there. But love these blades. Love what Beto is doing out there. And yeah, check him out on the social channels and then track down one of these blades, because They're awesome. Vito, thanks so much. Appreciate it. Looking forward to seeing you soon. Thank you for tuning in to the Danger Close podcast, an Ironclad original presented by Navy Federal Credit Union. To find out more about Jason Kasper, go to Jason-Kasper, and that's Kasper. Find out more about his books there and where to follow him on the social channels. OfficialJackCarr.com is my website, JackCarrUSA.com for the merch, and on the social channels at JackCarrUSA. If you enjoyed our conversation, be sure to leave a 5-star rating and review wherever you get your podcasts. And In the Blood, the next novel in the James Reese saga, is coming in hot on May 17th in hardcover, ebook, and audiobook, and is available for pre-order now. Thank you so much for tuning in. It is sincerely appreciated. Take care out there. Stay safe. Be strong. Keep fighting.